Welcome to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you are ready to find your inner magic, develop great habits, and a rock steady mindset to feel confident, comfortable, and fit in your body, you are in the right place. I am Kim Barnes Jefferson, and I'll be giving you weekly doses of health, fitness, and life tips sprinkled with humor and real talk. If you're ready to be consistent without the stress of perfection, magic makers, it's time to slip into your favorite pair of PJs, grab some coffee, kick back, and listen to today's show.
All right, Magic Makers, another iTunes review of the week. This one is from Emmy Roberts 24. She says, Kim is the queen. She is fierce, funny, and smart as a whip. Kim embodies what it means to be a life coach by offering so much more than diet and workout tips. Whether you're a gym junkie or just beginning your journey, she helps you see that living an all-around better lifestyle is not only attainable, but something you can strive for. Regardless of your age, Kim is a tough love friend you need to kick your butt into gear. She said something recently that resonated with me. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain your boundaries to justify them to anyone. Let that sink in. 5 stars always. Thank you, Miss Emmy Roberts. Yes, that was a game changer for me. You know, when I first started in this fitness journey, I was double dipping. I had a corporate job as well as fitness, and it was really hard for me to say no to clients. It was really hard for me to say no to my boss because I needed the cash. But I was getting burnt the F out. And so I finally had to come up with my boundaries and finally have to say to myself, like, you know what? It doesn't work for me to work out in the morning. Like I just can't do it. And now I don't really hop on the phone with a client until at least 10 o'clock in the morning. I need that warm up time for me. So I really want you to start thinking and exploring your boundaries. I've done several podcasts about boundaries, and please listen to them if you're someone who's like, I need some boundaries in my life. Thank you again, Miss Emmy Roberts. If there's anyone out there who would love to share a iTunes review and you're like, I don't know how to do that, reach out to me. In the bottom of this podcast, you will find out how you can reach out to me for social media, and just shoot me a DM. I will answer them. All right, ladies, enjoy the episode. Hey, Magic Makers. I am so excited that today we have made it to episode 300. And I can't freaking believe here we are at episode 300. You know, if someone would have told me back when I first started this podcast that, you know, I was overthinking every little episode, rewriting the titles, what should the launch should be, what should this be like, and I was like, would anyone ever listen? Would anyone ever like give a crap about what I would have to say? Could I get gaffed? Like, I mean, all the woulda, coulda, shoulda, like that all just like imposter syndrome all came out of me. And in true fashion, like me, I'm not going to throw you some boring highlight reel. I'm just going to give you like what I boiled it down to like 30 things that I've learned over the last few years of recording 30 episodes. And over the course of time, you know, I have not missed a week. Every week I put out a podcast, and I want to do a shout out to Derek, who is my producer, because when I started this podcast, this is what I knew, that I couldn't do it by myself. I know me. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. And like the technical stuff, I could procrastinate the shit out of that. And so I want to thank Derek for one, you know, being the person who's like, hey girl, you got to give me an episode, or something's missing, or just, you know, always being there, that reminder for me, because that's what I want. That's what I need. And I pay him handsomely to help me make sure that this podcast gets out each and every week. I also want to thank my VA, Liana, because she helps me to just like put all the other moving pieces together. I just want to talk into the mic. And then have it magically show up in your ears. So I want to thank both of them for helping me get to 300 episodes here. And with that said, it's like, don't wait until you're ready. And I waited 4 years to start this podcast. I remember I'm like, yeah, podcast, that would be so cool. Yeah, I should do a podcast. And then the doubts started creeping in. And it's like, oh, well, I'm not sure. Like, what about this and what about that? And like the laundry list of all the bullshit came out. And I kicked myself for not starting this sooner, right? Like, this is what I know, is that your idea doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to get started. Hey, Magic Makers, real quick before we dive in, can we talk about your metabolism for a second? If you feel like your body has been giving you the finger lately, you are not crazy and you definitely are not broken. You might have a metabolism that is tired AF. I created a fun quiz to help you figure out exactly what's going on with your metabolism and what the heck to do about it. It could be, are you eating too little? Overtraining? Maybe doing the right things and still feeling stuck? This quiz will call it out. It only takes a few minutes and you will get a custom result that is spooky spot on. So if you're ready to stop throwing spaghetti against the wall and finally figure out how to eat, train, and feel good again, go take the quiz like right frickin' now. Link is in the show notes. Let's figure out how your metabolism is holding you back and how to get out of diet jail. So back to the show. Because trust me, there's been many a times, and you'll hear through these next few things I've learned, many a times that things didn't go right. I'm sitting here and I have recorded a podcast and the audio was just shit. And I had to re-record it. There are times that like an episode, like I thought I pressed record and I didn't press record for the first 30 minutes, right? So there have been those times. And so what that said is that temper tantrums are allowed, right? They're allowed, like, because, was that did I have a dud guest? Fortunately, I have yet to have a dud guest. So thank you, guest, who are attracted to this show. Did a mic not record? Yeah, it's recorded and the audio has been shit and I've had to redo it. Have people given me bad feedback? Yeah, they certainly have. And guess what? Go ahead, have the meltdown, have the pity party, but don't set up camp there. And, scream, cry, and then move on. And, if I circle this back to health and weight loss, I see so many of us that something didn't go the way it planned. And everything is an experiment. This is what I've really learned in these, this over 40 life. Everything is an experiment. It's not going to go perfectly. But what it is that you have to observe what did work and what didn't work. And let's take out the things that didn't work. And that's what I've learned over time. Bad days. Yeah. There have been days when I am supposed to record an episode and I am just not feeling perky. And like the last thing I want to do is get on this damn mic and be like, oh, it's all going to be all sunshine and roses. No, right? It is going to happen. Right? There are going to be flops. There are going to be awkward interviews. I had a person on my show who literally hijacked my show. And anytime I tried to get a word in edgewise, he like ran on and on and on. And like, it was the longest episode I've ever had. And I was like, is this man ever going to shut up and let me like wrap up the show? And so it happened. But did it ruin my podcast? Did like you guys not listen? You might have not listened to the whole episode of that one, but you didn't stop listening. So bad days happen, and I've learned. It taught me a lesson that, now in my communication, I'm like, my show is 45 minutes long. And if we can't wrap it up in 45 minutes, then I am not the show for you. Right? There are podcasts out there that have, 1-2 hour long episodes. And I mean, good Lord, when I do listen to those kind of podcasts, it's like, I treat it like a mini series. I want you guys to be able to come in, listen to this episode, be in and out, no messing about, because we got shit to do. Right? So that's what I really want us to, that's what the goal of my podcast is. And here's where, I, just like anybody, I get caught up in my comparison game. And the best thing a coach ever said to me, and whenever I find myself getting into the, like, why am I not somewhere faster or wherever, whatever it is that I don't think I'm enough or I'm where I want to be, I have to say, I have to pick my pace and make peace with it, right? I am the queen of hustle. I am a recovering hustler. And I didn't want to be in the hustle anymore. Hustling, all it did was made me feel burnt out, right? I always feel like I wasn't enough. I wasn't doing something fast enough. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't working long enough. I wasn't enough. And I don't want to feel like that anymore. I get to choose how I want to feel. And so I had to pick my pace, right? And I'm not in that race anymore. I'm not trying to be the fastest, the bestest. I'm trying to be Kim. I'm trying to keep my own damn sanity, right? So I don't want to chase anymore. And sometimes I sprint, absolutely. Sometimes I stroll, but both get me there. And there's some days that I'm going to sprint, and some days I'm like, hey, it's 9 times out of 10, I set the deadline. It's my self-imposed deadline. And trust me, old Kim, she was a bitch. She did not, she was a bitch to work for. And, I don't want to go there anymore. Which leads me into the, next thing I learned is that if nothing changes, nothing changes. If I kept driving myself into the ground, I'm just literally how low can you go when you're below sea level, right? So for years, I would eat the same foods. I did the same workouts. I kept up the same work ethic. And I wondered why I wasn't getting ahead. Wonder why nothing seemed to be working. Duh. If you recycle the same strategies and expect magic, and you didn't get magic the last time you ran that strategy, guess what? Something needs to be tweaked. And, there's 2 lessons in one here. It's one, if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? If I eat the same foods, I do the same workouts, and I'm like, why am I, not, losing the belly? Why isn't the scale moving? Well, you're doing the same shit. And clearly it ain't working. So something has to change. But also I have to ask myself, is that, do I want to change? Or am I happy setting myself up for failure? Right? Because that's what I am. And it's harsh. And I don't want it to be harsh, but sometimes you got to have that hard conversation with yourself. And I see it all the time when, women come to me, 9 times out of 10, the women come to me, it's not because they're eating like crap. It's because of the inconsistencies that I see. It's the inconsistencies or the going hard that we've been taught for so long. And, in this podcast, I've learned that going hard doesn't get me an episode. Going hard doesn't lose the weight, right? So it's we have to stand up for ourselves, and we have to start doing things scared. We have to start thinking of things as experiments, because half the time I press record, I have an outline about what I'm going to say when I do a solo episode, but I haven't really flushed it out. So who knows? Sometimes I'm like, am I going to be at a loss for words? Am I going to get to 5 minutes in and that's a wrap, folks? So far, it hasn't happened thus far. I've been fortunate that, I think some of you remember that before I started this whole thing, I sat down and I wrote a list of 52 things I wanted to talk about. And I still have several things on that list, but I've been, open to people approaching me to say, hey, can so-and-so be on your podcast? And being like, hey, that sounds like an interesting topic that I don't have the depth to fully have a conversation. And I have questions too. But now, as I hit 300, I'm like, it might be time. It is time to go back, revisit that list and write down, do I have 52 other topics that I want to cover? And as I do that, I say to myself, what are the, when I wrote the, ding, ding, ding. When I wrote the list initially, I was like, what is it that I can talk about? And then I went back through and I said, what are other things that I need to find someone else to talk about? And that's where I started doing the bulk of my work here. But it was do it scared. You don't know how it's going to work out. I'm making a guess. I'm making a guess that the topics that I come up with, you want to hear. But now that I've had, 300 episodes under my belt, I have been able to kind of just hear the conversations around me, hear the conversations in my Fake Girl Magic group, and the questions that I see out in the, the social media sphere. And, it's okay to get excited, right? I want to get excited, but not compliant, right? And so it's I have to be excited about what it is that I'm doing. I ditched the follow the blueprint, right? Because it was when I first started this podcast, it was there are people out here like, hey, buy my blueprint buy my podcast blueprint, buy my podcast. And I did. Yeah, of course I did. And then some of it just didn't feel like me. And I had to start really saying what felt like me, what could I keep up with, right? There were people out there, it's like, oh, you need to have 2 episodes a week. And I tried that. And like, sometimes I can really have 2 episodes a week. And sometimes like, girl, I don't have the time in my day. So it's like, if I'm not feeling it, I can start to tap out, right? I want to start creating things that light me up. And when I start talking about things that light me up, that's when the magic happens, right? It's not with me being like, following this formulaic blueprint. I've also started to like be less of a winger. Like I can wing a lot of things. And usually it works out for me. This, I can't wing, right? I know that every Monday I owe Derek an episode. And I know that if I don't have an episode loaded by noontime, he's like, hey girl, hey, what you got? Right. And I know that. And so it's, it's certain things I can wing. Like I live in the winging world, but there's certain things I can wing. And there's certain things that have to have a plan. And if I didn't have a solid plan, every Thursday, you guys wouldn't have an episode, right? If Derek wasn't like the kind of person that he is, he'd be like, oh, well, I guess she's not recording this week and like make an assumption. No, he knows. And I've been very clear, like there is going to be a podcast each and every week, unless I specifically tell you there's not going to be a podcast. So he counts on me for my consistency and I count on him for his consistency. So we go back and forth with our own accountability. And sustainability, like I purposefully, I have a calendar that I stick to, and I go through that calendar and I write down, who I've, pre-recorded, what episodes did I have to record. And I sit down at the beginning of every month and I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? So that I can start to like think about, okay, these are the topics that I want to cover. But then it's like, as I'm thinking about these are the topics I want to cover, I also start to kind of see, is there anyone talking about these topics out there? Right? Or am I just making this stuff up for myself? Because my best content comes from my clients, right? My clients hearing what they're struggling with, seeing what other people are struggling with and be like, oh, people are still struggling with that? Okay, we got to talk about that because I want you to know that there is a solution. Now, here's the thing. I wish it was 12 weeks to, your goals. But at this age, it doesn't come like that. For most people, I recommend that you make a commitment, right? I made a commitment to this podcast and I told myself that I was going to make it to 100 episodes and then I was going to see. And well, here we are, 300, and I still like it, right? And it's okay to start something and then be like, you know what? It's not for me. But it's like you have to start it. And I always tell people, you have to give something 90 days. And the reason why I say 90 days, especially when it comes to weight loss, fat loss at 40 plus, one, you have been doing the same shit for you don't even know how long, right? So then what I see is that in the first month, I'm spending about 2 to 3 weeks, just seeing what's going on. And for the most part, some of you aren't consistent with workouts, aren't consistent with food, and I'm trying to get you to that consistency. So that takes probably another 2 to 3 weeks to find something that you can do consistently. Could you, eat breakfast consistently or some meal consistently? Can you, make sure that every Monday you go to the gym or, add that 15-minute walk or whatever, right? So it takes about like a good 6 weeks to like get the like uncomfortable piece out. And then the next 6 weeks, it's really kind of like, okay, this feels good. Let's keep going. Is there something we can add there? Because y'all want to come in and be like, Kim, hand me a blueprint and I'm just going to magic. I'm going to be able to do it. And I'm going to tell you you're not. I absolutely not. Because if you said to me right now, hey, Kim, this is what you're going to do for the next 12 weeks, I would be like, okay. And now I'm like, it would overwhelm me. Brutal honesty. It would overwhelm me. But then I would also have to say to myself, like, how do I break this down? Right? How do I start with what feels easy? And so for me, when I started this podcast, it's like, okay, how do I break it down? And it was like, okay, I need to find music. So I've just focused on music, you know, and then it was like, anytime I got an idea for the show, I would put it on that list. And it would just be like, this is what I'm focusing on, music. This is what I'm focusing on. The intro, what does the intro sound like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? Right. So it was just, what's the vibe of the show? And so it was like, I had to break things down into pieces. I couldn't just be like, here on Tuesday, we're going to put together the whole damn show. No, it was being sustainable, right? Because sustainability, that's the sexy part, right? And, you know, if this podcast could only last as long as my caffeine high, it wouldn't be worth it, right? My best content comes from the consistency, not the chaos. And chaos only breeds more chaos, right? What I've learned over the years is that there has to be a formulaic plan so that when something doesn't work, you can go back and be like, oh, this is the weak link, or oh, this is the stuff. This is the thing that really like moved the needle for me, right? And with that said, I can't be afraid of boring, right? Every episode isn't going to be like, you know, the cliffhanger. Like, is it going to be the dun dun dun? See you next week. Every week's not going to be that way. Same with when it comes to my nutrition. You know, I remember, you know, I started this business and I was like, you know, stories were the big thing. You got to do a story every single day. And I was like, I'm boring, right? My weeks are pretty boring. My weeks, 90% of the time, look exactly the same, right? And I'm going to tell you this, and then I want you to write it down, and then probably going to listen to a podcast 6 months from now, and I'm going to say the same boring things. Sunday, I sit down Sunday morning, and I do a workout on Sunday morning. I plan my week. I'm like, what am I eating? What does the workouts look for the week? And I'm literally putting it into my calendar. Monday is a lift day, and a lift and a walk day. Tuesday is my rest day. I will also go for a walk on Tuesday. Wednesday is a lift day and a cardio day. Thursday, lift, cardio. Friday, rest day. Groceries when I go to the grocery store. Friday morning, 8 a.m., I go to the grocery store. I've gone to the grocery store at 8 a.m. since the COVID times when you had to like get there early, and if I got there early, I didn't have to wait in line. And then I realized no one's in the freaking store. Why haven't I been going to the grocery store first thing in the morning for decades? Anywho, and then, you know, I got my girl. She waits on me every single Friday. We've become close. I know about her cats and her kids. Yeah. Then Saturday is first thing in the morning. My husband and I go for a workout, and then, you know, whatever I do on Saturday, it's my Saturday. My Saturday is Kim's side, and that's pretty much how my week goes as far as when it comes to workouts. My food, boring too. Breakfast, I will have a shake for breakfast. I mix up the fruit from week to week. I'll mix up the good fat oils when I run out of them. My lunch is either a big ass salad with protein or a soup. And then dinner is protein veg, right? Boring AF. But you know what actually moves the needle for me? Because those are my non-negotiables. Right? I created these non-negotiables, so I stopped being hustle Kim, right? And I was able to come up with 3 things that I knew I could easily do. And over time, I've ebbed and flowed, but I started being boring because that's what actually moved the needle, repeating myself, not trying to do 50 things that I just heard some guru on some other podcast say, or I read on social media, or I went to a party on Saturday night and so-and-so said, this is how, you know, I've got a snatched waist, right? Turns out people need to hear something 27 times before it sticks. So yeah, doing the same shit over and over and over again. And guess what? I've been able to keep my results, and I've been able to not make myself fucking crazy. And rest, I was that person who my workouts, if they were not 2 hours long, did you even work out? And a rest day, that was hot yoga. I look back, I want to slap the shit out of myself, right? Old me was all about the push, the hustle. And, now Tuesday, Friday are my days. And sometimes if I wake up and my body's not feeling it, I'm like, you know what? I can move around my days because I make the schedule. Yeah, I make the schedule. And so I finally leaned into, setting that damn bedtime and leaning into rest. Like I live for my bedtime ritual. I live for it, During COVID, I started reading books for pleasure. Oh my gosh. Now I'm like, oh, I got a date with my book, right? So I've read, pretty much everything Colleen Hoover has written, Emily Henry, like I've gone back into my Jennifer Weiner's phase. Like, so it's like, sometimes I read stuff that, scares the shit out of me. And then I'm like, I really shouldn't read that before I go to bed. But it all is it's what I do to just kind of take land the plane, as I like to say. And it's like your way, their way, right? I know that when people come to me, they want me to say, do this. And that's how I used to coach. Yeah, I did say that. I was that coach. But now I'm like, where are you? How do I meet you where you are? Right? Because I've, just like you, I bought coaching. I bought courses. I've tried all the formulas, but then I finally had to start feeling like what felt right for me. I had to understand like, okay, is this realistic for my life? Right? Am I excited about doing this? And can I plan for it in my life? And ultimately, I'm looking for sustainability. At this juncture in my life, I'm not looking for this 6-week boot camp that I beat the shit out of myself. I'm like, because I'm always like, what happens in week 7? What do I do in week 7? Right? That's where I am. Like, if it tells me that boot camp tells me I need to be there every day, Monday through Friday at 5 a.m., I'm out. I do get up early and work out in the morning, but it's like, I like my ebb and flow. Like, I like my schedule. I want to be the driver of my schedule. And I think the reason why so many of you struggle with things like this is because you're doing shit that you hate. I had a client, Kira, and she had a lot of weight to lose, bad knees, bad hips. And she told me she joined this kickboxing class. And I'm like, why are you doing kickboxing? I'm like, didn't you told me that you had some orthopedic issues? And she's like, well, they told me I would lose, however much weight in 8 weeks. And I'm like, but if you can't keep up with the class and you always have to be like going hard, how is that possible? And then, fast forward 3 weeks and she's like, I really think I did something bad to my knees. And I'm like, that is what makes me pissed at those kind of programs, because it's like, you were just looking at the number. She's here like handing you her credit card, like asking for help. And instead of saying, hey, you know what? Maybe kickboxing isn't for you. We have this other alternative. You're like, oh yeah, girl, you're going to lose 60 pounds in 60 days. It's going to be fabulous. Come on in. And that's what really, pisses me off about that, right? It's like, we really need to lean into like what works right for you versus what is good for everyone. What's good for everyone isn't always good for you. Right. So as a coach, I always look at you as the individual. What I also learned is people don't just listen because I know stuff, right? They listen because I show up, right? I show up and I don't hold back my weird. I don't hold back my insecurities. I don't hold back my mistakes. I let you know that sometimes I struggle, and guess what? You're going to struggle too. When I first started coaching, I had a client and she's like, oh, I can't wait for this diet thing to be over. And I said, explain that. And she said, well, once I'm done dieting, I will never and lose the weight. I won't ever have to diet again. And I was like, and honestly, I wish it worked that way. And one of the things that we're going to dive into over the next several episodes is the phased approach to dieting that I have really embraced over the last couple years, especially for us 40-something years old, because many of us have been taught we need to diet within an inch of our lives, right? We've been taught that. We've been fed a lot, like a whole bunch of bullshit. And one of the things that I'm going to lean into is that there are, 4 phases of nutrition, and that, just like we have 4 seasons, football has 4 quarters, basketball has 4 quarters. There are I'd say 12 to 18 weeks, we're looking at our nutrition and making any potential tweaks. So, it's from you are actually dieting, and dieting isn't you are doing this you're not dieting for the rest of your natural born life. You are eventually going to be opening up your diet, adding in more calories. Potentially some of you might be like, oh, I want to really have like a season where I'm just like building like, a crazy woman. And then we have a season where we're coming out of that build into, maintenance. And then we have a season where we're going into a fat loss phase. So it's really understanding the ebbs and flows in your system, but also like surrendering that you can't always be eating 1,200 calories and wondering what the bleep is going on, right? The thing I learned is that as I do this podcast, talk to one person, right? So here I am, sitting in my office by myself, and as I'm, outlining the episode, I have a specific person that I'm speaking to, right? If in my mind, that person is sitting across from me, and I'm telling her like what she needs to hear, right? And is, the person who is, feeling like the desperate dieter, for some episodes, the person who feels like they're a rosy rule follower. I'm talking to that. I'm talking to, the person who always feels like, they're sabotaging their results. So like I'm talking to Sally Sabotager, right? So it's like every episode I have a woman that I'm specifically talking to, but at the end of the day, I'm for the women out there who feel like their body gave them the finger. You turn 40 and you're like, I used to be able to, just pull out the ice cream, pull out the extra wine, pull out the extra guac, and boom, in a couple weeks, I was able to like, have the results that I wanted. And sister girl, and I don't mean this to like rain on your parade, but that doesn't work anymore. So that's why, again, going back to talking about having that like systematic nutrition approach is going to give you much more sanity than the, hey, I'm going on a Caribbean cruise in 2 weeks. How do I like, sprint to the finish line? Sorry, not sorry. It's those sprinting to the finish line diets that we've done that kind of put us in the predicament that we are right now. And this is no judgment, because trust me, I did my fair share of sprinting to the finish line. I had to stop trying to be Beyonce, right? There are other people out there that have these like elaborate like podcast studios, or they go to a studio, and I didn't want to add that expense. 2, I like the fact that, on a random Sunday afternoon, I'm like, I owe a podcast. I could just sit down and just like bang it out. And I think to myself, like, do I need a better mic? Do I need, like, I'm literally talking to you guys. I have some sound foam in literally a cardboard box. That's how I started the podcast. And I can look at the microphone input levels to make sure my voice is coming through. And then, Derek works his magic. But yeah, like I had to like, I'm not Beyonce. I'm like, I'm not going to have costume changes. I am not going to have a fan blowing through my hair, although that would be fabulous. And when you have a hot flash or two, having that fan blowing in your face would be awesome, but it does screw around with my sound. It does screw off my sound. But I remember when I first started coaching and first started like doing stuff online, I had a coach who and like video started to become a thing. And I had a coach who's like, Kim, maybe you want to put on a little makeup and do something with yourself before you got on video. And I was like, you know nothing about fitness people. Like this is how I show up, right? And when I meet many of you listening to this show, I want you to be like, oh my God, that's Kim. She looks exactly how she looks on social media. She sounds exactly how she sounds on her podcast. Like, I don't want there to be this disconnect from the person who is behind the screen, behind the mic, and the person who's in front of the mic. And I think for many of you, I've been fortunate that I do meet a lot of you, that you say that you're like, oh my God, you're just like how you are. I'm like, because that's super important to me for me to have this, like, there's no veil between what you see right now and if we were, sitting over a cup of coffee. And, one of the things is like, as I got stuck in my perfectionism, if I didn't cringe at a few episodes, like in the first 50, like, awkward beginnings, right? Think about like when we all have those pictures from when we were in our like teens and you look at the picture and you thought you look so freaking hot and you're like, oh Lord, why didn't anybody pull me back? Why didn't anyone be like, girl, what were you thinking? But it's proof I started, right? It's proof that we all have that moment where you're just like, oh, Lord Jesus, that was not me, right? We all have those. And I'm sure I could go back to episodes, God knows, I'd be like, oh, I said that out loud and it's recorded. Oh, but it's the consistency, right? For so many things, it's the consistency, right? Motivation is flaky. So many people are like, oh, I'm just not motivated. Here's the thing. Motivation isn't going to ring the doorbell. And consistency is that ride or die. Like consistency is what shows up. And so that is why, like for me, I have to create a schedule. Schedules help me with my consistency, right? I can consistently put something off and I need that. I need that schedule. I need, to know like, okay, I need to get this to someone by the 15th. Like I need the schedule to do that. Same thing with my workout. Like I said, I sit down on Sundays and I put it in my calendar. That's what keeps me consistent. The second thing that keeps me consistent is that I don't bite off more than I can chew, right? So I knew that if I was going to do this show, I needed to have support because I could not do this by myself, right? I would find like some tech glitch and be like, it's a sign, see, right? Writing something, it's a sign. And so that's why for many of you, hiring a coach, but here's the thing, when you hire a coach, we are not magic. You have to show up, right? So in this podcast world, if I don't sit here behind the mic and talk, Derek has nothing to do. Liana has nothing to do, right? So for me, I'm the driver of that. So as a client, if you don't talk to your coach is going to be like, what's going on, right? You are the driver of the information. You are what is going to help them facilitate your change, help you facilitate your growth. But if you disappear on them, then you're going to get the hey girl, hey email, right? And so for my clients, usually it's probably like 4 to 6 weeks, they get the hey girl, hey email, be like, what's going on? Talk to me. All right. And so that's where we kind of start to think about what consistency looks like. And like consistency, and I will always say this to people, I'm a good, better, or best person, right? That's how I roll because I used to always try to be like Sally. I used to be like, try to like perfect Patty, right? I had to do everything perfectly, get all the check pluses and then try to get some extra credit. And I couldn't be consistent because all it took out of my 500 thing to-do list, if I missed one, I sucked, right? Because I was just, my inner critic is a gang member. Like she will like cut you. And I want you to think that, nobody cares as much as you think. All right. So it's like that mistake that you made and you obsessed over for 3 days. Like, and if I made a mistake right now and someone pulled it up, I'm like, bitch, you're a fan. You are a fan. Like, no one has listened to me as closely as I think they are. I mean, I want you to. That'd be fabulous. However, I know that now. So it's like, I had to like get off my perfect pedestal and be like, I'm giving you what I can. And if you don't like it, that's okay. I am not for everybody. I am like tequila. It's like, I'm like a shot of tequila. Some people are like, hey girl, hey. And some people are like, ew, that tastes like I'm drinking in the sun. So it's all that matters. And, my voice matters. Like what I have to say matters. Like there are people who write to me, they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for, the simple things. And that's my ultimate goal of the show. I want this to be so, so, so simple that you aren't feeling like overwhelmed. Like you don't feel like you have that 500 item checklist, right? And so as I sit here and talk, like someone is always there to listen, right? Someone is always there to listen. And the last few before we close down this 300th episode is that like progress doesn't always look impressive, right? Progress isn't, so many people, especially in the weight loss space, right? You want to like, I've been good all week, I've been good. And then you hop on the scale and the scale's like up 2 or doesn't change at all. Or you try to put on your favorite pair of jeans and like they still feel the same way, right? Sometimes it's just showing up, right? It's like I have consistently showed up. And even if, right, I have a cold and I owe a show, as long as I can talk, I'm going to show up because how many of us get a cold? And if you go back probably 10 episodes, you'll hear that I had a cold for like a month. But it's showing up. You keep showing up because eventually, because it's not always going to happen on your timeline, right? One of my favorite authors is Gabrielle Bernstein, and she's got several books. And if you are someone who struggles with mindset, like she will definitely like help you to kind of put your head on right. And so one of the things she's like, you have to surrender the timeline, right? And the best way I could describe it is like around like, weight loss, pregnancy, finding your love or a job or whatever. It's like, you have to just say, this is what I want. And you have to say, you have to surrender. Like, you can't be like, I want to have a new job by Tuesday, the 25th. And on Tuesday, 25th, if like you don't have the new job or, you're not down 2 pounds or Princess Charming hasn't rang your doorbell, you can't be all like, that's a sign, it sucks, bleh, right? You can't be that way. We have to kind of start to learn how to just surrender to be like, this is what I want and be super clear about what it is that you want and just let it go. Because, the universe will deliver. But the universe has your back, which is one of the books that I really started reading with Gabrielle before I went down the rabbit hole with her. The universe has your back, so you just have to surrender. And I will always say this: boundaries will save your sanity. Not every idea that you have, not every idea that someone has, not every thing someone wants you to do deserves your time and your attention. Not every DM deserves an immediate reply. I know it's hard to say no, but you can say no without writing a novel about it. And one of the ways that I run my own business, and it's really hard as a coach to get an email on a Saturday afternoon and I'm sitting around on a Saturday afternoon, not doing anything to be like, oh, I'll just get back to this person. Or on a Sunday, and I'm like, I had to say to myself, Kim, you work Monday through Friday. If I was working for my corporate job, would I answer this email? And that might be for my clients who are listening, that might be hard to hear, but it's like, I have to protect my own self-care. I have to protect my own space and peace, because some people, that email could go ping pong back and forth for hours, right? Versus, hey, I love you. I care about you. I support you. But my boundary is we talk Monday through Friday, and be okay with that. And that was a very hard, bitter pill for me to swallow. But it also, I think, teaches my clients the same thing for boundaries in their life regarding their work-life balance, right? Because I didn't have a work-life balance. And, I had to start to be obsessed with the basics, right? So my microphone, not fancy, right? It's not the $200 microphone. I don't have this like boom mic that comes out from the wall, right? Like I said earlier, I'm talking into literally a cardboard box that I got from Amazon, like when I started this podcast 6 years ago. So it's the basics work. And the same thing when it comes down to the basics, when it comes to health and fitness, the basics work, getting a good night's sleep, managing your stress, working on your protein, working on your carbs, working on your mindset, all that shit, it works, right? So nail the basics and you will go far. And feedback is not a death sentence, right? I get feedback a lot. People are like, oh, you said blah, blah, blah. Okay. Like, you don't agree with it. It's just my opinion. All right. My opinion on one works for me. And even as a coach, I'm going to be like, hey, this is something that I've seen work. Give it a try. And I know everyone is a unique snowflake. And I know for me that certain things that people are having a ridiculous amount of success with, I haven't had that success with. Intermittent fasting, it doesn't work for me. It makes me hungrier when I intermittent fast. But if it works for you and you're not using it as a control mechanism, rock on with your bad self. But it's like you also have to be, listen to what your own body is going through. And give your idea some breathing room. Like sometimes I'm sitting at my kitchen table, I'm like, yeah, I should talk about this. And then I'm like, I sit down to like write the episode and I want to record it that day or later that week. And I'm like, and it's just not it's not gelling the way that I want it to. So then I have to kind of step back and be like, okay, how do I what's the approach? Is it the angle that I'm trying to approach it at? Is it the story? Is it something else? Is it, just not a big thing as I think it is? I don't know, right? Am I just rambling? And then I just have to kind of like let it marinate. And for those of you guys watching the video, I literally have like Post-it notes. And, if you guys have watched the YouTube video, you'll see behind me, I have a whiteboard that I literally have like, I just literally write something down on the whiteboard and I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if it's going to take me somewhere, or I don't know if it's just going to sit there for years, but I put it up there. And, I love reviews, right? I absolutely love reviews. I love hearing what you have to say. I love hearing that if something has changed, that I've impacted your life in some way. I want to hear about it. I also want to hear about like if something I said like made you crazy. Trust me, I am not afraid to give you my opinion. And I know that technology will betray me. I know that one day this mic will go out halfway through the show. Right? I know that. I know that one day my internet will just like shit the bed while I'm doing the show. But, like I said, I can laugh, I can cry, I can swear, I could swear. But I'm not going to let it stop me, right? Because if it does, I'll come back the next episode and be like, oh my God, the craziest thing happened to me. Because how many of us haven't had technology like just, crap out of us in the middle of the podcast? And here's where like the two things I will leave you with, right? Is that no one knows what they're doing when they first start, right? That's the magic of being a beginner. And I know all of us want to start something and just fucking crush it, but we have to just start to say to ourselves, like, I need to give myself grace. I am a beginner. It's going to take longer than I want it to. I want to learn this in 2.2 seconds, and it might take me, 2.2 years, 2.2 days, but at least I'm trying, right? I had a mentor say this to me when I was, in the thick of like, should I not do the podcast? She said, the time's going to pass anyway. right? So you might as well pass it and make a shitty podcast until eventually you make a podcast that you're absolutely like, yeah, this is the podcast that I've, been dreaming about for years. And finally, keep going, right? Even when it's quiet, even when it's hard, even when it feels like no one's listening, even when it feels like, does anyone really give a shit about this? Because one day I'm going to look back, right, and realize like, wow, that was a really great episode. Wow, that was a really great topic. That was a really great, that was magical. And I've just met some amazing people on this podcast journey, and I'm really grateful for all of that. And I'm grateful for you who tune into my show and share it with their friends. And I want to thank you for being on this ride with me, whether you've been here since episode 1 or you just found me today. Thank you for being part of the magic. And, I'm just getting started. I mean, I'm hopeful that, I don't do math. So let's just say however many years it is that, it's episode 600. And I'm like, oh my God, we're at 600. So want to help me celebrate? Leave me a review, send this to a friend, or post your favorite lesson that you've walked away from, either from this episode or from something I've said over the 300 or 299 episodes, and tag me on either Facebook or Instagram. And I'm going to be over here doing a happy dance in my PJs, and I can't wait to hear all about you. All right, Magic Makers, it has been an amazing 300 episode ride, and I can't wait for this. This ride isn't going to end anytime soon. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you've made it this far, yay. I'm thinking you enjoyed the show. Let's continue the conversation on Instagram. You can find me at Kim Jefferson Coach. In order for me to keep sharing this message, do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. New episodes are available every Wednesday. The Fit Girl Magic podcast is intended to provide you with tips, tools, and strategies that will help you make better decisions about your health. I really appreciate your feedback and your support. Thank you so much.